Backyard Bullion here, and today we have a very exciting video to share with you all. It's an interview with a bullion dealer, Chards. They are a very, very well-known and long-established dealer here in the United Kingdom, probably one of the longest. We'll talk about that as we go. So without further ado, I'd like to bring in Lawrence Chard, owner and director of Chards Coin and Bullion Dealers.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
You're welcome, and thank you very much for the opportunity to have a sit down, albeit virtually, because of the way the world is working at the moment. So, Chards, I said at the beginning of the intro there that you've been very long established. Tell us about Chards and how long you guys have been in operation.
Okay, well, sometime before 1964, but I don't know exactly when before that. And I know you asked me earlier what made me set up a bullion dealership.
Yes.
And in fact, that didn't quite happen like that because we were coin dealers before bullion dealers.
Yeah, because correct me if I'm wrong, because this was even way before I was a twinkle in the milkman's eye. But bullion ownership was very different back in the 50s, 60s, even 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was indeed. So we started in coins for a couple of reasons. And I'll start with that because that's how the bullion then came about.
Sure.
Our family had amusement arcades on Blackpool Promenade.
Yeah.
And as kids, my cousin and I used to help out from being about 11 years old. And one of the jobs was counting old pennies through an old hand cranked counting machine.
Sure, yeah.
Which was hard work, and you had to check the coins weren't damaged, bent, thin, otherwise you jam the machine and the job would take twice as long. And then somebody gave us a list one day of old pennies they'd pay a premium for.
Yeah.
And it went from there.
Fascinating.
And hey presto, we were kind of in the coin business.
Yeah.
And that was also before decimalisation. In fact,
Yes.
decimalisation was announced in about 1965.
Yeah, and then it came in effect in 71.
71, yeah. So we were already set up and working before the big announcements, and we kind of were lucky to have a wave to be able to ride, so that was an opportunity. Now the bullion bit is gold sovereigns are a sort of standard and historical British gold coin,
yeah,
and they're also a bullion coin. And
yes.
way back in the 60s, in the UK market, they were almost the only gold bullion coin. Sovereigns were probably at least 90% of the market.
Sure. That's really interesting to know.
Yeah, half sovereigns were secondary.
Yeah.
And then after that, there were all sorts of foreign things like Swiss 20 francs, French 20 francs,
yeah.
US gold eagles.
But those all sound like old school coins rather than... So what about like the modern sovereigns? There was a break in mintage, wasn't there, in a certain point? So, I can't remember off the top of my head. But were you dealing predominantly in old world sovereigns? So,
well, yes, in 63, 64, sovereigns had restarted production in 1957.
Yeah.
But even then, most of the ones that we saw were older ones. Yeah. And sovereigns were regularly minted up till 1932.
Yeah.
Then there was a break.
Go on then, give us a tease. How much was a sovereign sold for back in the 60s? What was the pounds and pennies figure?
In those days,
comparison.
We'd sell an ordinary sovereign, basically a bullion sovereign, or generally you could pick your dates, or certainly if you were there over the counter, £4 each.
Goodness me.
Yeah, and we used to run an advert in the Exchange and Mart, if anybody can remember that. And that was, I can almost remember the wordings, that was gold sovereign, £4 each, £37.50 per 10, £365 per 100, and £3,500 per 1,000.
That's really interesting, because that's almost at that level, that top level, that's almost exactly 100 times the value of a sovereign today.
It is just about, yeah. Which actually means that the pound in your pocket is only worth 1% of what it used to be worth.
That was going to be my exact next point. So many people forget that. They go, oh, you could have made 100 times your investment, but actually in real terms, it's not quite how it works. But Wow, that is a blast from the past, isn't it? And
Yeah,
quite fascinating. How about
yeah,
Krugerrands? Because I know Krugerrands were one of these big coins that came in. This is just a half Krugerrand, incidentally, one that you guys
yeah.
softly
That's a nice
bought
one.
from.
Have you
Um,
worked out whether that is a proof or not yet? By the way.
no, I haven't devoted some time and energy to really research it and look just yet. A few of my viewers thought it would be, but I haven't really researched it. But
And
regardless, it's a lovely coin.
there's no point you counting the edulations because
No,
the proof and the unks are the same in that
yes,
for half.
I do know that. I did ask. In fact, one of the very first gold coins I ever had was a half Krugerrand that I share with my brother that I inherited from my grandfather. And when I had that for the very first time here on YouTube, somebody said, count the dots on the ring to see if it's proof. But that's not necessarily true. So it's a bit of a
No.
misnomer. But
It works for the full sovereign, sovereign.
For the
It
full
works for the
Krugerrands,
1 ounce Krugerrand. It doesn't work with the actions because they've got the same numbers on proof and normal.
Sure. So as time evolved from the start of being a kind of coin-based business and dealerships, so to speak, dealerships are a bit of a weird word, I suppose, but coin seller, how did it progress to that more bullion world? Because from my limited experience, the world of owning bullion changed so drastically from kind of the mid-70s to the 90s. That was a big change in general bullion ownership.
Sure. Well, as far as I'm concerned, it seems it was a fairly gradual change, except, there were some events that actually did accelerate the movement and the market. There were ups and downs. But the point being that way back then, investment in, say, gold bullion in sovereigns and collecting more or less merged and overlapped.
Yeah.
And actually back in those days, if you wanted a minty sovereign or a scarce date, we actually sold most of those for about £5.
Okay.
So, and when we sold, and I tell you, a lot of, we got an amazingly large number of people actually buying 1,000 coins by mail order.
Really?
We come in on a Monday morning and there'd be a check there, £3,500, 1,000 sovereigns, please.
Goodness
And
me.
we used to make an average of about 10 pence each on them.
Okay.
In today's money.
Yeah.
On a bad day, we'd make an old one and 9 pence, so that was about 9 pence. And on a good day, we might make 2 and 3 pence, so about 11 new pence.
Yeah.
But that's not bad, £100 profit on order. But these orders would turn up from people we'd never heard of.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody had phoned and had a chat before.
Yeah.
Maybe they'd taken out a bank reference on us in those days because you could do that then. You can't do now. And that was good business. And also, and also for collectors, sovereigns have always been a very cheap way of collecting coins.
They have, and I get asked a lot when I've shown coins on my channel and gold coins specifically, because I often try and target 1 ounce gold coins. I like the size. I think they're a good size for me. But people say, of course, buying 1 ounce of gold is quite a large chunk of change that you need. So why not buy fractionals? And most fractional gold is quite high premium, but sovereigns are very low premium, certainly in the bullion grade condition. And you can get some really good gems out of these big batches. So
that's the point I've been making for many years now.
So it's really interesting to see that change. So in terms of Chards as a business, as a unit, you obviously grew from strength to strength by the sound of it. Any business that's been operating 50, 60 years has got to evolve with times and got to change how they work. Gold ownership obviously changed quite significantly over this period. But how did Chards adapt to the new world, the introduction of the internet and increased ownership of gold within sort of general public, and then leading up to the elimination of VAT from gold purchases? What was the sort of impact that had on your business?
Well, there's always been challenges and there's always been opportunities. You mentioned Krugerrands before. Yeah, they came out in 1967. When they came out, I'm pretty sure there were international embargoes on anything from South Africa.
Yeah, which is why I understand. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but which is why I understand the Maples took over as the new coin of preference.
Yeah, but Canada was in quite late with the
Was it?
maples. Maples didn't come out until I think 1979, I think.
Mm.
It's a memory test now to pull some of these dates back, and I was never good at remembering dates. But yeah, so when Krugers came out, you couldn't buy them in the UK.
Yeah.
A few got smuggled in, same probably into the USA.
Yeah.
And then, I still don't know when the apartheid embargo effectively stopped. But stop it did at some stage. But then we had another disruption in the UK in the bullion market, because in 1966, on about the late April 66, the government brought out an exchange control order as an extension to the 1947 Exchange Control Act. And that made it quite clear that UK residents could not buy gold coins or gold bars and couldn't continue to own more than 4. Now, if it had been in America, the American dealers would have been called in this gold confiscation like they had in 1933.
Yeah.
Of course, it never was. It never was confiscation. It was just that you weren't allowed to buy them and continue to hold them.
Yes.
Interesting. So that really put a big damper on the bullion business for 1966.
Because I seem to remember reading that the extreme collectors had to apply for a license to collect more than the 4 coins or buy new coins.
Yeah, so, that's right. Yeah. And that was fraught with a little bit of risk, because if you applied for a collector's license and you included, say, 50 gold sovereigns in it or gold coins, and you didn't get granted the license, you'd reveal your hand, and then you have to do something about it. Yeah. So of course you've got to decide: do you apply for one? Do you not apply? And there were also a lot of new collectors that had started with, say, old pennies and maybe half crowns, and wanted to buy 1 or 2 sovereigns to go with it. Yeah. And some of those people got refused for licenses because they didn't already own any gold, or they weren't proven that they were collectors. Yet they were new collectors.
Very interesting.
They'd been in the market collecting for 6 months or a year. They wanted to extend, and no, they couldn't do it because they hadn't been collecting for 100 years.
Very interesting.
Anyway, that all got repealed in 71, and by which time gold had already shot up. Yep. I should have done some homework and figured out how much it was in 71, but needless to say, it had shot. Yeah, it was halfway to its peak of $850, because it went up from $35 an ounce in about 1963, 64 to $850
Goodness.
in 1974. And then it basically declined in a jagged line and a jagged graph till 1999. Yeah. And then things changed again. So yeah, there was government interference there, and it screwed the UK bullion business for quite a while. We actually did manage to continue selling gold coins to collectors. Yeah. And you basically couldn't invest. But then there was another change in 73, because VAT was introduced, and VAT applied to all coins, whether they were legal tender or not. Yeah. And it wasn't for quite a few years, and I don't even know now when, that there was second-hand exemption granted for that. The antiques trade and the motor trade had good lobby groups, and they managed to ensure that antiques could be dealt with on a special scheme. But if you bought and sold anything else second-hand, you paid VAT on it twice. Yeah, definitely. Which is not fair, and it's not what VAT was supposed to be designed for. No, and again, and
now we just have one remaining item that has the VAT on it. Well, I suppose platinum as well, and a few of the other rarer metals, but silver, the one that now everybody is talking about. It's interesting, I think, that the way that the world has changed so much, that there's so much focus, it seems, on silver these days. How does Chards view it? Do you do more volume of work in silver or gold at the moment?
Well, you'll notice that up until now I hadn't even mentioned silver. Yeah. And way back in the 60s, almost nobody invested in silver in physical silver.
Yeah.
There weren't any 1 ounce silver bullion coins.
No.
If you wanted to collect silver coins, or you wanted to invest in silver coins, you could have just stored old money, just old coins out of change, which
Yeah.
would have actually been quite good. You'd have done very well out of it.
Yes.
The main silver bullion coin back then would have been the Maria Theresa thalers, which you'll know all about.
I love those coins.
Yeah.
You still
Lovely.
apparently can see them being used in Middle Eastern bazaars today as exchange tokens, which I find fascinating.
I'm told you can. I've never been and viewed it.
No, I've not. But you know, there are a few people on various different forums that says they've seen it. I guess it's all relative, but yeah, no. It is interesting that we're in this time now where silver seems to be getting a little bit more limelight. I guess that's partly due to it being, as we said earlier, when you're looking to put money into metals and you confronted with buying a 1 ounce silver coin or a 1 ounce gold coin, you know, the price point there is obviously, you can purchase a 1 ounce coin of silver a lot easier than gold. But yeah, it is interesting to see the culture shift, I suppose, is what I'm getting at, for people to come into silver. And the mints around the world have embraced it because now there's so much product out there to choose from. It's almost it's in fact impossible to keep up as a collector if you want to try and get some of the coolest coins out there.
It gets difficult, you're right. And I was just trying to think when the first 1 ounce silver bullion coin came out, and I'm struggling.
Britannia's silver was 97, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Maples.
Yeah, Maples.
Probably Maples or US Eagles. I have had a few 80s dated US Eagles.
US Eagles were the first.
Were they?
Yeah, and then Maples followed. And I can't remember what date Eagles first came out. I should know. So in fact, yeah. No, I should know and I don't.
I seem to remember reading somewhere 86. 86 is springing out in memory to me, but I could be wrong.
It sounds familiar. You're probably right in that.
But, yeah, interesting. So we've talked a lot about the past, and we've talked a lot about how the world has changed and also how shards evolved. 21st century, being a bullion dealer, we'll put coronavirus and all of that stresses and strains to one side for now, but just generally, tell us what Chards offers to consumers. What sets you apart from other dealers? Because there are so many out there, and it's always good to hear from the man himself what makes you guys special.
Sure. Just before we do that, when you were talking a minute ago, I think the Nelson Bunker Hunt episode actually brought silver into public consciousness and made people think, hey, here is an opportunity.
Okay.
Because if you know, Bunker Hunt famously cornered the market in silver.
Yes.
The CME and the New York Exchange, most of the brokers in there nearly went bust because they were shorting it all.
Yes.
And Bunker Hunt
major manipulation. That's where a lot of these manipulation questions and theories come from and have extended from. So,
well, all the future contracts are, I should say, are derivatives in a way. Theoretically, they are for delivery. Yeah. And the Bunker Hunts realised they'd got enough money to actually keep taking deliveries and corner and squeeze the market, which they did.
Yeah.
The silver went up from, I don't know, around about 50 cents an ounce to $47 an ounce.
Yeah, it's close to 50, wasn't it?
Yeah, and at that stage, it may have even hit 50 on intraday trades. And at that stage, all the brokers and members of the exchanges said, hey, we're going to go bust here. We'll change the rules.
Yeah.
They changed the rules and you could no longer buy future contracts. You could sell. And then silver declined and went back down to, well, not much above 50 cents.
No, it's funny, isn't it?
About $1.70 or something.
We humans don't seem to learn from our mistakes in financial markets, do we? And there's always somebody that's going to end up making a lot of money and always somebody that's going to lose a lot of money out of these things. And it just seems to be cyclical. We always have things in motion, don't we, as humans, in terms of money and markets?
Sure, we do. And markets nearly always do excesses. and then
Yeah.
come back from them, and often huge excesses by 50% maybe.
Yeah.
In both directions, too
Yeah.
low, too high.
Yeah, I'm very glad I'm not a day trader. So
Yeah.
back to an important question. What sets Chards apart from other dealers?
Okay, good question. Thank you. Well, right from the start, I came in knowing nothing much about coins apart from old pennies.
Yeah.
And when we did start dealing in coins, and people asked us about, or people brought in things like hammered silver coins, Henry III silver pennies. I knew from the start that our customers knew more than I did, so I needed to learn quite quick. And I've always assumed that I don't know everything and I don't know enough. And any of our customers can know a lot more than I do, particularly about their speciality.
Yeah.
In which case, yeah, I can learn from them. On the other hand, where we get customers in who don't know much, we're happy to try and help them. So what makes us a little bit different? Well, when we came into the market, most of the established dealers were specialists of some kind. And that would be some people only dealt in Roman coins or ancient Greek coins or hammered coins, some possibly 19th, 20th century coins. Only a few dealt in things like gold coins exclusively.
Yeah.
And I used to be, well, jealous and slightly envious, I would say, of the London dealers and the London market, because down there you had a much richer secondary market. You had people who'd got collections of Roman coins and hammered coins. You'd also got the British Museum, so you could nip in there to learn stuff or to have something checked. I've always been up in Blackpool, and it's a bit of a backyard.
Sure, to coin a name.
Yeah, perhaps I should say backwater, but there's an advert for you. So it was always clear that we couldn't, and in any case, didn't really want to specialise. So we've always been a generalist.
Sure.
So there's a paradox. Our speciality is being a generalist.
Okay.
And that's always stood us in quite good stead.
Yeah.
It does always mean that you can't possibly know everything there is to know about every coin that's ever been made or that's being made at the moment. Occasionally I've tried to calculate how many different coin designs or types there must have been issued since coinage started 2,500 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just run out of numbers.
Yeah, there aren't enough numbers, I think.
I sometimes look at the bookshelves in the office and they're absolutely stuffed full of coin catalogues.
Sure.
And you could take a Kraus modern coinage out in there that just deals in 21st century coins, and the book's probably 300, 400, 500 pages, and it's crammed in. You'd struggle to know every coin in there.
Yeah.
Go back another century or a couple of centuries, and wow, it goes crazy.
Yeah.
So being a generalist has always been good, and the generalization means that the crossover between bullion and collectible was also quite smooth and natural. We've always done both. So somebody can come into us and buy a single 1 ounce silver coin as a collector's item. If somebody wants to buy 1,000 1 ounce silver coins or some kilo bars, you can do that as well.
Yeah.
And we've always made a market in those. The big snag, and you mentioned this before, is that the VAT on silver coins in the UK.
Yes.
And on platinum and palladium.
Yes.
And it's a shame in a way, because the EU recognised that.
I was going to bring that point, and I do feel a little bit bad for some of the UK dealers, because I have been quite a proponent of promoting the fact that you can buy silver from Europe and European dealers without attracting as much VAT. People don't necessarily understand that there is still some attached to it from some dealers. And even if it's not necessarily VAT, there are other European import taxes generally. So it's not at spot price, but it is arguably cheaper.
Sure, and I don't mind and don't object to you doing that. It's quite right.
It will be interesting after Brexit whether or not that changes. it'll be an interesting time for sure. That's a
Yeah.
topic, I suppose, for another whole hour's worth of video in the future, maybe. But
Oh yeah, the kind of grey import stuff could
yeah,
change.
well, that
Right.
and whether or not the UK now having autonomy can change VAT or change what and how it applies it, and yeah, it'll be interesting to say the least. So
It would be fabulous if the UK decided that yeah, it would create VAT exemption for silver, platinum, palladium
yeah,
investment material,
I've
investment coins and
always
bars.
thought, at least, at very least, surely on Royal Mint made coins, Britannia's, Orient, all the special coins they do, the Queen's Beasts, you're just missing out a trick there. You're cutting your nose off to spite your face almost, because the amount of extra VAT revenue that you get from selling them would be more than made up by the additional amount of sales going into UK businesses that come from it. So it does seem a bit of an odd one to have. But anyway, VAT and VAT on silver specifically, I think, is a topic for another time. What I would like to just jump in with to ask you a few questions from some of the viewers who watched me give a video on these two coins. I did in there ask them to suggest some questions, which, if it's all right with you, Lawrence, we go ahead
Sure.
with a couple of them.
Yeah, I did look at that video of yours, by the way.
Yes, I know, and I saw you commented on it as well. It's nice to see that you guys did that. And just because I know someone will ask, that video wasn't sponsored, and it was very. What was really nice, Lawrence, I must say, is the dealing between myself and you guys was very open and honest. That wasn't a sponsored video. You guys sold gold to me at the same price you would to any other person out there. I thought I was treated incredibly well by your members of staff and just generally by the business, and my needs were serviced perfectly, and it was well deserved that you guys got a shout out from that. So just wanted to put that out there.
That's great that you said so, and I didn't know anything about that until until I saw your video mentioned somewhere. I think one of our staff saw it and mentioned it.
Well, there you go.
The maple was a bit ugly, by the way.
It's all right. I really don't mind. I actually quite like it. I gave it a bit of a clean, which I know you shouldn't necessarily do, but I like it. I think it's a pretty cool coin. So, to the questions, I've got one from Jason De Leon, who asks, "What is Mr. Chard's favourite precious metal and why?"
It probably does have to be gold.
Yeah.
But it could change, because at the minute, if I were looking to put some discretionary money into a precious metal, it would, well, certainly recently it would have been silver. Yeah. And when the gold silver ratio ran up to, I think we saw it at 126 to 1.
Yeah.
That's stupidly cheap. When it hit 100 to 1 only a week or so before that, I don't think we'd ever seen it above 100. I think we'd seen it at 100 once, ever, and that's incredibly high. But now platinum is, to my mind, ridiculously cheap.
I know, isn't it? Just I've mentioned this a few times, saying that back when I was young and reading all of the fantasy novels and things I did, it was silver, gold, then platinum as the highest denomination fantasy metal coin, and platinum albums were bigger than gold albums, and now platinum is half the price, more than half the price, less than gold is. So it really does make it interesting. So we'll maybe ask you the same question in 5 years' time and see if your opinion has changed from the king of precious metals. Now we've got another question. I'm just going to find it again so I can say who it was. Wayne Richards asks a question about buying back. So a lot of people, I guess the question, he hasn't really phrased a particular question, but he is asking generally about buying back. You guys offer buyback service from the public, and you've mentioned the second-hand market. So buying from the public, I suppose, is a really important part of your business. It's how you gain stock to sell. So whilst Wayne hasn't asked a particular question, he did just generally would like to know a little bit more about your buyback service and what it's all about and how you go about it.
Sure. Well, I normally wouldn't call it buyback, because that implies that we had to sell it in the first place. Fair point. There are quite a lot of dealers about, and organisations that will only buy back. They won't buy. So if you want to sell the Royal Mint and sovereigns that you bought from us, they won't buy them because they'll only buy back.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm not sure whether they'll buy back any that they've sent you by post,
Sure.
unless they've had them in storage.
Sure.
And there is the point that, yes, you have to be able to check in, which means you have to have people there who know what a real coin looks like, what a fake looks like. Fortunately, we get that right most of the time. And people like banks, the high street banks once jumped into the gold bullion market.
I remember.
And
they
yeah.
had, well, I don't remember, but I know about it. I've heard and read about it. It's before my time, but yeah, interesting.
So buyback, yeah, we've always bought, and when we started out doing coins, we either found coins in circulation ourselves, or we bought them from the public, other collectors, been in Blackpool from arcade workers and people in change desks.
Yeah.
So yeah, buying secondary market stuff has always been more important than new stuff.
And is that generally what do you get most of coming in through that service? Is it just the standard bullion coins, the cheapest chips bullion, or do you get slightly rarer coins that perhaps you might spend more than spot price buying?
Well, I wish we got more old, interesting coins, and by that I mean medieval coins, ancient coins.
Yeah.
But I've touched on this before. In the north of England, there's not quite as much a collecting tradition as there has been in London and the southeast.
Sure.
So we don't get those as often as I like. Having said that, when we get interesting coins, they're quite time-consuming.
Yeah.
And it's probably inefficient dealing in those, but it's more fun.
Yeah, no, I can imagine it sparks the interest a little bit more than just another gold maple that's dinged and damaged. One thing actually that somebody else, I've lost the question now, sorry, but they asked about a dinged or damaged gold coin, and they said, would you offer 10% underneath spot price for a gold coin that had a big dent in it or a big scratch in it?
It depends how bad it was. Yeah, if something is really badly damaged, and actually we do get badly damaged coins in just about every day of the week. And a lot of these are things like sovereigns and other coins that have been in jewellery.
Yeah.
And even when they're in mounts that are supposedly not going to harm the coin or going to protect them,
they always leave marks.
They're usually worn, they're scratched. You get gouges in them from where the bezels have been fitted over the coin, or whether the clumsy jeweller has hit the coin with a tool.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, they're just scrap, and we only buy them in at scrap in that case.
I think it's important that people understand that, don't they? Because I think a lot of people sometimes get quite funny about this, that a bullion dealer almost has a responsibility to pay the best possible price to the consumer when they come to the dealer with their gold to sell. But at the end of the day, you guys are a business, and I get it as well, because I run obviously a poured silver business. So when I look to make my stuff, I try and get as cheap as possible things to manufacture with. And if you've got a gold coin which has been cut in half, or it's so damaged that you wouldn't be able to sell it as a coin, you've got to then release that from your business in terms of scrapping it, melting it, refining it, and that all costs time and money. So people don't necessarily sometimes understand that, I think, isn't it?
You're quite right there. You've obviously got a good understanding of the business from your own experience, and that's absolutely right. We also introduced something about a year or so ago, and that's what you bought actually, grade C bullion coins.
Yeah.
In that if a coin is really too good to scrap, but not good enough to sell as a normal bullion grade coin, then we call it a grade C. We don't have a grade B, but we call it grade C to make it crystal clear that it's not as good. And they're basically coins that are just better than scrap. And we do find, and in the past we've had people like Indian doctors come in to buy those.
Yeah.
Because they'll take them to India when they go on holiday. And they'll go to a local jeweller there that'll turn them into a couple of pairs of earrings.
Yeah, yeah.
And charge them about £2 or £3 for the labour. Making little earrings.
Yeah, it's a very interesting market, and personally, I really don't mind. And when I showed these on that video a couple of weeks ago, the amount of people that said they don't care either what condition the coin is. I think it worked out at 1.2% spot price when I purchased these.
Sure, yeah.
With the shipping, but it was, it's 1% without shipping, 1% with the shipping. So obviously the more you buy, the lower the percentages. But that's a phenomenal price, even, just generally speaking, but let alone in a coronavirus world where supply and demand are out of whack quite so much. So that, for me, grade C, bring it on. So Lawrence, we have so much to cover. I think we're going to have to split this interview into 2 parts. So we'll wrap up part 1 here today, and we'll be back tomorrow for part 2. So guys, if you have enjoyed what we've been talking about so far, then let us know down in the comment section. And if you've enjoyed the interview, then please make sure you hit that thumbs up button as well. It really does help everything here on YouTube. If you've got any questions, please shoot them down below. Lawrence and I will try our best to reply to everybody's. All we ask is that you be polite and respectful of our opinions and others as well. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Please make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more.